Have you ever wondered how close you've come to danger without even realizing it? At Shivering Vault, we take you there, one story at a time. But before you drift off, consider liking this video and commenting where you're watching from. Now, let's dive into these chilling stories. I'm a 26-year-old woman living in a small town in Pennsylvania. I live alone in a modest one-bedroom house I rent. It's not in the middle of nowhere or anything, but my neighborhood is pretty quiet. Lots of older people, not a lot of commotion. That afternoon, I was working from home when I got the notification on my phone. It was from some shipping company I didn't recognize, and the message said, "Your package has been delivered." It was weird, because I hadn't ordered anything recently. I double-checked my email to make sure I didn't forget something. Nothing. I looked out my front window, and sure enough, there was a brown box sitting on my porch. At first, I was kind of excited. I mean, who doesn't love a surprise package? But as I got closer, something about it made my excitement turn into unease. There was no label, no markings, just a plain box, about the size of a shoebox. I picked it up and brought it inside, but as soon as I set it down on the kitchen counter, my gut was telling me something wasn't right. The tape sealing the box looked off, like it had been hastily slapped on, and the box itself was kind of dirty, like it had been sitting in someone's garage for years. I decided not to open it right away. Instead, I left it on the counter and went back to work. But the longer it sat there, the more it bugged me. Around 7 p.m., I finally gave in and grabbed a pair of scissors to cut the tape. Inside, there was nothing. Just crumpled up newspaper. No note. No product. No anything. Just trash. At this point, I was more annoyed than anything else. I figured it was either some prank or maybe even a mistake. I don't know. I tossed it in the trash and went about my night. Around 9:30, I was getting ready for bed when my doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone, and I don't exactly get a lot of visitors, so it startled me. I hesitated for a moment, then peeked out the peephole. There was a man standing on my porch. He was wearing a dark hoodie and holding one of those handheld delivery scanners, like what UPS or FedEx drivers use. I didn't open the door. Instead, I asked, "Can I help you?" He didn't answer right away. He just stood there for a second, looking around like he was checking to see if anyone else was nearby. Then he said, "Hi. I think I left a package here earlier by mistake. Can I grab it?" My stomach dropped. The package, the one with nothing in it. I told him there was nothing in it. I threw it away. He didn't seem to like that answer. His expression tightened, and he shifted his weight like he was about to step closer to the door. "It's really important," he said. "Can I come in and look for it?" That was a big, fat no from me. "Sorry, but no. I'm not comfortable with that." He didn't say anything for a few seconds, just stood there, staring at the door like he was trying to decide what to do. Then he nodded once and walked away. I watched through the peephole as he headed down the street. I tried to shake it off and convince myself it was over, but about an hour later, I heard a noise outside. It sounded like someone walking around my backyard. I froze. My first thought was that it was the same guy, but I didn't want to jump to conclusions. Slowly, I turned off all the lights and crept to the back window. There he was. Same hoodie, same build. He was standing near my back door, looking at it like he was trying to figure out how to get in. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might give me away. I grabbed my phone and called 911, whispering as quietly as I could. The dispatcher told me to stay on the line, and stay hidden until officers arrived. But before they could get there, the guy started jiggling the doorknob. Then he tried the windows. I thought for sure he was going to break one and come inside. When the sound of sirens finally cut through the night, he bolted. I didn't see where he went, but by the time the cops arrived, he was long gone. I gave the officers a full description of the guy and told them about the package. They seemed concerned, but didn't have much to go on. A few days later, one of the officers came back with an update. They'd done some digging and discovered that this guy had been targeting homes in the area, specifically ones where young women lived alone. His tactic was chillingly calculated, using a fake delivery package as an excuse to scope out the house. If no one answered the door, he'd attempt to break in. The thought made my stomach turn. The realization that a stranger had been watching me, planning something sinister, left me feeling exposed and vulnerable in my own home. It was a violation I can't even begin to put into words. After that, I didn't take any chances. I installed security cameras, upgraded all my locks, and made sure I was never caught off guard again. If you ever get a notification for a delivery you didn't order, don't brush it off. Be cautious. It's better to be overly careful than to end up a victim. It was a Friday night in early fall. My parents were out of town for the weekend, visiting my aunt in Pittsburgh. They offered to let me come along, but I had work at the local diner the next morning and didn't want to miss my shift. I figured it would be a relaxing weekend, just me, some movies, and FaceTiming my best friend Sarah. Our house isn't anything fancy. It's a modest single-story home in a small town in Pennsylvania. Behind the house is a fenced backyard with a sliding glass door that leads from the living room to a small patio. The door doesn't have curtains, but we never felt the need for them. The yard is surrounded by trees, and our neighbors aren't close enough to see into the house. I had just finished eating pizza and was sprawled out on the couch, FaceTiming Sarah. We were talking about her work drama, something about her annoying coworker stealing her lunch again. It was the usual banter, and I wasn't really paying attention to anything outside the conversation. At one point, I noticed Sarah had gone quiet. She wasn't laughing or reacting like she usually did. I looked at the screen, and her expression was off. "Sarah, what's up?" I asked, laughing a little to lighten the mood. She didn't answer right away. When she did, her voice was low and tense. "We someone standing behind you." My heart sank. I whipped my head around, scanning the living room. Nothing. The only thing behind me was the sliding glass door, and through it, I could see the empty backyard. "Very funny," I said, trying to brush it off. "You almost got me." "I'm not joking," she said firmly. "I saw someone standing behind you, by the glass door." I stood up, my stomach doing flips. "No, you didn't," I said, walking toward the door to prove her wrong. The backyard was still. The only light came from the small porch light above the patio, casting long shadows across the yard. "See, nothing's there," I said, turning my phone toward the door to show her. Sarah still didn't look convinced. "Maybe I was seeing things," she muttered, but she sounded uneasy. Even though I didn't see anyone, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. I walked around the house, double-checking the locks on the doors and windows. Everything was secure. I even peeked outside the front door, but the street was quiet, just like it always was. "Everything's fine," I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. "You're just tired or something." "Yeah, maybe," she replied. I sat back down, but I couldn't relax. My eyes kept darting to the sliding door, expecting to see someone standing there. I tried to focus on the conversation with Sarah, but my mind kept replaying what she said. About 15 minutes later, Sarah and I were still talking, and I was starting to calm down. That's when I noticed it. The faintest movement in the corner of my eye. I turned my head sharply toward the sliding glass door. At first I thought I was imagining it, but then I saw it again. A shadow, shifting, just beyond the porch light's reach. "Sarah," I whispered, clutching my phone tighter. "There's someone out there." Her voice came through the phone, panicked. "What? What do you mean?" "I saw someone move," I said, barely able to get the words out. "Call the police," she shouted, but I didn't move. I couldn't. My body felt frozen, like I was stuck in place. My eyes were glued to the glass, waiting for the shadow to move again. And then it did. A figure stepped into the light. It was a man. He was tall, wearing a dark hoodie, the hood pulled up over his head. I couldn't see his face clearly, but I could tell he was looking right at me. I stumbled backward, almost dropping my phone. "Oh my God," I whispered. "What's happening?" Sarah's voice was frantic. "He's just standing there," I said, my voice trembling. "Lock the door, call the police," she yelled. I forced myself to move, running to the door and grabbing the lock. My hands were shaking so badly it took me a second to slide it into place. The man didn't move. He just stood there, watching me. I grabbed the baseball bat my dad keeps by the front door and backed away from the sliding door. My heart was racing, and I could barely think straight. Then, without warning, he turned and walked away, disappearing into the shadows at the edge of the yard. I thought that was the end of it, but then I heard it. The faint sound of footsteps on the side of the house. I spun around, clutching the bat like my life depended on it. The footsteps grew louder, moving toward the kitchen window. And then I saw him. He was crouched outside the window, his face pressed against the glass. His eyes were locked on me, and he had this twisted grin on his face, like he was enjoying my fear. I screamed and ran toward the front door. "Sarah, call the cops," I shouted, barely able to think straight. I flung the front door open and bolted outside, my bare feet hitting the cold pavement of the driveway. I didn't stop running until I reached my neighbor's house, pounding on their door like a maniac. The police arrived within minutes, but by then the man was gone. They searched the yard and the surrounding streets but didn't find anything. They told me it looked like he had climbed over the fence to get into the backyard. They found smudged fingerprints on the sliding glass door and the kitchen window. I stayed with a neighbor that night, and when my parents came home, we installed security cameras and motion-activated lights around the house. I haven't been home alone since. I'm a pretty normal guy, nothing special. Just a single 28-year-old living in a quiet suburb in Pennsylvania. The kind of place where nothing ever happens, or at least that's what I thought. I moved into this house about 6 months ago. It's a small, 2-bedroom home with an attic and a basement. I don't use the attic. It's just too cramped and dusty for me to bother with. I've been slowly fixing the place up. Painting, replacing old fixtures, that kind of thing. It's been nice living alone, though sometimes it gets a little too quiet. At least, that's what I used to think. The first time I heard it, I didn't think much of it. It was late, maybe around 11 p.m., and I was sitting on the couch watching TV. I heard a faint creak from above me. The house was old, so I figured it was just settling. Houses do that, right? But then it happened again, the next night, and the night after that. It wasn't every night, but often enough that I started paying attention. At first, I convinced myself it was squirrels or raccoons. We've got plenty of those around here. But the weird thing was, the noises always came at the same time, late at night, around 11 or 12. It wasn't random scratching or scurrying either. It sounded like footsteps. Slow, deliberate footsteps. I told myself I was imagining it. I even joked to a coworker about my ghost problem, though I'm not someone who believes in that stuff. Still, the idea of anything or anyone up there made my skin crawl. One night, about a month ago, I decided to check it out. I grabbed a flashlight and one of those old baseball bats I keep in the closet. My heart was pounding as I climbed the stairs to the attic. The air up there was thick and stale, and the beam of my flashlight barely cut through the darkness. I didn't see anything, just boxes, cobwebs, and a few old pieces of furniture left by the previous owner. I spent maybe 10 minutes looking around before heading back down. After that, I didn't hear anything for a while. I thought maybe whatever animal had been up there had moved on. I even started sleeping better. But then, last week, the noises came back. And they were louder. I couldn't ignore it anymore. Every night, just after I settled in for bed, I'd hear it. The creak of floorboards. The faint sound of something moving around up there. By now, I was too scared to go back up there. Instead, I called a pest control company and told them I thought I had raccoons in the attic. A guy came out the next day, looked around, and told me he didn't see any signs of animals. No droppings, no nests, nothing. He even joked that maybe I had a squatter up there. I laughed it off, but the thought stuck with me. 2 nights ago, things escalated. I was in bed, trying to fall asleep, when I heard it again. Footsteps. But this time, they weren't just in the attic. They were on the stairs. I froze. My heart felt like it was going to explode out of my chest. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911, whispering to the operator that someone was in my house. She told me to stay on the line and hide until the police arrived. I crept into the closet, clutching the baseball bat I'd brought into my room after the first time I heard the noises. I sat there, shaking, listening to the sound of someone moving around downstairs. I heard the creak of the fridge door, the soft thud of cabinets opening and closing. It felt like an eternity before I saw the flashing lights through the crack in the closet door. The police came in, yelling for whoever was in the house to come out. I heard footsteps running, followed by the sound of something crashing to the ground. When the officers found me, I was too shaken to even move. They helped me out of the closet and told me the man had gotten away. He climbed out through one of the attic vents and onto the roof. After searching the house, they found a makeshift bed in the attic, a pile of blankets, and a couple of empty food wrappers. The man had been living up there for weeks, maybe even months. The officers told me they'd been getting reports of someone breaking into attics in the neighborhood, but hadn't been able to catch him. I can't stop thinking about it. He was in my house, living just above me, watching me. Every time I heard those footsteps, he was there, and I didn't even know. I didn't sleep at all that night. Even now, the memory keeps me on edge, and I can't shake the feeling of vulnerability. That's it for today's tale from Shivering Vault. If you have a story worth sharing, drop it in the comments or send it our way. Don't forget to subscribe and share with your fellow thrill seekers. As always, The Shivering Vault thanks you for unlocking today's tale. Until next time, the vault awaits your return.